Jack Dorsey of Twitter doubling down on his decision to not remove conspiracy theorist Alex Jones from the platform. He called into Sean Hannity's radio show to reiterate that stance last night. Take a listen.
We do not shadow ban according to political ideology or viewpoint or content, period. Every model that we have on the network is really looking at the behaviors on the network. We take those behaviors as signals. And I do want to point out that these signals evolve minute by minute, hourly by hourly. These are not scarlet permanent letters that people then take on as a badge and will never be ranked high in search or not allowed to trend or ranked high in conversation. So these are models that are looking at behaviors and behaviors of bad faith actors who intend to manipulate, distract, divide a conversation, or to unfairly amplify their content, which they didn't earn.
Roger, looks like Dorsey's going to go on a bit of a media tour the next few days. Obviously, the safety part of Twitter's been writing blogs left and right, a lot of tweets from Jack. The debate here is there an algo that can arbitrate truth at scale? And if not, then what is their responsibility?
So, Carl, I think the problem that we have here is a misunderstanding of what the First Amendment is all about. I mean, the idea of the First Amendment is to protect the free speech of individual Americans from repression by the government. What's going on here is you have companies, in this case Twitter, but also Facebook and Google, who act like the government and enforce a set of rules related to speech. And the problem is that their business interests are driven by promoting conspiracy theories, promoting anger and fear. It's not because they're bad people, it's simply because that is what gets the most attention and the most economic value. And so they're in this really difficult position where they would like to have all the conspiracy theorists remain on their platform, and yet they do need to respond to public pressure. And the problem here is that these guys should not be the ones making the decisions about what speech is useful, what speech is appropriate or not. I look at this in a very simple way. If people are out there shouting fire in a crowded theater, that is clearly not protected speech. And I think Alex Jones and other conspiracy theorists are the internet equivalents of shouting fire in a crowded theater. And we have to have a national conversation about where those limits are, and we need to make some choices about that, and we need to take it out of the hands of the platform.
Scott, I mean, Silicon Valley spent so long trying to avoid touching content, really getting its hands dirty because of exactly these kinds of issues. They don't want to make values-based decisions about content, but now they seem to be all in on content. They have to have it. Facebook's in. Google, of course, has been in for a long time. Twitter, too. How do they get out of this? Are they going to have to make the kinds of decisions that up to this point they haven't wanted to make?
Yeah, I think Roger's right. There's nothing in the backgrounds of any of these senior executives that would indicate that they're First Amendment crusaders. They've wrapped themselves in a blanket that ensures they will not slow down their growth. Dorsey is about to become, figure number one in this whole battle because he's taken a stand and he's come out and said essentially that it's important we hear their viewpoint so legitimate journalists can refute it. But that ignores all the science around our species and our platform. And that is, we as a species are easier to fool than to convince we've been fooled. So you develop these hermetically sealed communities online that refuse to believe, no, there isn't a child slavery ring run out of this pizza shop. And so when you let these fires catch, there's just no putting the genie back in the bottle. So this blather and this hand-wringing around, can they do it? We're not talking about the realm of the possible. We're talking about the realm of the profitable. And when something slows down their growth, they start couching it in terms like First Amendment, impossible, we don't want to be arbiters of truth. And I think Roger's absolutely right. Are we comfortable with 30-something-year-olds, some of whom are college graduates, deciding what content gets resonance across the largest communities ever assembled? Jack Dorsey just had his "I can't impugn what Holocaust deniers intend to do" moment. The next couple weeks are going to be very ugly for Mr. Dorsey.
Roger, just to dig into this a little bit further, if the companies and the CEOs themselves should not be in a position to self-police and sort of decide what should be and shouldn't be on their platforms, then that would infer that regulators should step in. I'm gonna go ahead and say it. We saw how the testimony with Mark Zuckerberg turned out in Congress. It seemed very much like a number of lawmakers don't fully understand tech or the business of tech. Would they be the ones capable of making the right types of regulations?
Yeah, so, Morgan, I think this issue is actually simpler than the one we dealt with in those hearings. This one is really about media. And there are a set of rules that govern CNBC, that govern newspapers, that govern any media about what is appropriate, what is not appropriate. And for reasons that are historical and relate to the early days of the internet platforms were exempted from all of that. It strikes me that the first, most basic thing is that we have to recognize that these are media companies, that they have enormous influence in our public square, and that in the case of Facebook, they are more or less the public square today. And as a consequence, they do need to be held to the same standards that their predecessors were held to, and that's the minimum. After that, Morgan, I think we can start to talk about whether there's something else we should be doing. But at a bare minimum, we got to hold them to the same rules we hold CNBC to.
I wonder, Scott, what you make of this idea that Jack's theory that bad behavior's self-correcting on the platform, that fact checkers are going to point out untruths. Emma Beals is a journalist who writes, journalists report facts. It's not their job to rebut every insane conspiracy theory that's dreamed up as a counter-narrative. That's sort of what they're relying on, aren't they?
Well, if the self-correction is that rumors and hoaxes spread like wildfire in Myanmar, Sri Lanka, and India, and people are pulled out of cars and lynched, okay, that's their self-correction. I mean, this stuff has gotten very scary. So the notion that this somehow is important to air this, you know, what was the movie with Will Ferrell where they all go back to college? I forget what
Old School?
Old School, yeah. And then Will Ferrell's in a debate with James Carville, and he gives a response. James Carville says, that was perfect. What Roger said was perfect. They should be held to the same standards as you. If you gave license and credibility to content and creators.
But that's the issue. That's the issue is Jack Dorsey doesn't want it to be said that InfoWars is a show on Periscope.
Right.
Because then he would have to cancel it. They're in this utility mindset, right? Where it's like, well, no, Alex Jones is just this guy out there, and Twitter is just how he talks.
So fair enough, Jack. If you want to be a utility, we regulate utilities, we regulate their pricing, we put together boards of governance around them. Congratulations, you're a utility. Or you're a media company. The definition of media is a firm that uses a medium for influence and reach. We have never had entities in the history of our species that are more media-ish than Facebook, Google, and Twitter. It's time for them to stop this blather and this delay and obfuscation around this hand-wringing conversation. They are responsible for their content, and they should be liable. Make them liable like any other media organization, and they're going to find God around this stuff and start policing it.